miraculous, magnificent Michael.
You want one for John, too?
For John.
Can you do one more, Stan?
What's that?
One more.
One
For
for
who?
John.
For John.
John?
He has, yes. See, we're all fans.
That's the way it should be.
The 90s was a different time.
What? Shit.
Specifically for pop culture. Today we have a fairly standard way of doing things in the United States when it comes to making movies or music. The internet has sort of demystified the process of making movies and music, and there's a much more direct line between what fans want and what creatives end up making. It's really cool. We get exactly what we want when we want it, and we know exactly how we got it. And it's a relationship that was built fairly recently. We didn't always just know how movies were getting made and what was going to happen in them. 10 years ago, Christian and I wanted that sort of thing, and to get it, we would go to these weird rumor sites that had absolutely no credibility and made these huge promises about what movies were going to come out, and we trusted them because they said so. You go back even further than that, and you have even less information, and that is how we arrive at the 90s. Now, the 90s was a weird time for me, because I forgot to exist for the entire decade, but from what I've read, movie making was a lot different back then. Filmmakers weren't trying to make these cinematic universes that had multi-film arcs meticulously crafted to please fans so that we would give them our money. They were more just doing things. Those crazy fucks just went, Keanu Reeves lives in a computer, lion framed for murder, men dress up in black suits to defeat your bug husband. And it worked! But somehow that batshit environment wasn't good for superhero movies, despite the fact that superheroes literally rely on the viewer accepting crazy shit. The highest grossing superhero film of the entire decade was Batman Forever. And crash course, for those who don't know. Batman Forever!
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through.
Wasn't exactly a cinematic masterpiece. And it was only the 47th highest grossing film of the decade. Last decade, 5 of the top 10 were Avengers movies, including number 1. To prove my point even further, today, Spider-Man has made 11 cinematic appearances, with 8 of them being in movies devoted entirely to him. In the 90s, he had 0! Like a bum! Okay, one more thing I have to talk about before I move on to my actual point, and that is celebrity worship. I'm not gonna say that today we don't have a celebrity worship problem. I think that we'll always have celebrity worship problems for as long as there are celebrities. But I will say that I don't think that we have a superstar today that is even remotely comparable to the superstar power of Michael Jackson. And in the 90s, he was reaching his fever pitch. I mean, people were in love with the dude, like they are in love with Jesus Christ. Or my sister, when she introduces us to her new girlfriend, and everyone's so happy for her, despite the fact that I just got 50 views on YouTube, so I'm special too. And that's where we get into today's story. See, I was silly-goosing around on the internet the other day when I saw that Michael Jackson, at arguably the peak of his career, tried to play the first cinematic portrayal of Spider-Man. I don't know if I hit that hard enough right now, so let me reiterate, just for safety's sake. Michael Jackson, world-famous superstar, known well for his music, not known as well for his acting, tried to become the first person ever to play outcast superhero Spider-Man, famously teenager Peter Parker, on the big screen. For the first time! I mean, the fact that there was a chance that there was a version of history where a lot of people's first introduction to one of the most popular superheroes of all time was him being played by Michael Jackson is insane to me. And what's even more crazy is the fact that nobody seems to talk about it. I've only seen it talked about for maybe 15 seconds in short clips on YouTube, and other than that, nothing. And that baffles me. So I'm gonna talk about it. You're welcome. Okay, before we get too deep into this, let me just say I'm not gonna talk about any of the accusations that would have been cropping up about Michael Jackson at the time of this story. It's not that I don't think the conversation's important or not worth having, I just don't think it fits into the narrative that I am trying to tell here, and I don't want to make any judgments on Jackson as a person in this video, so it's just not worth talking about. If you want to know more about what I'm talking about, if you don't know somehow, go look it up on Wikipedia. They have tons of stuff on it, and then they have links to all their articles, or you can watch documentaries. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. It just doesn't fit here for this video, so I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm not going to make jokes about it, because that would be unfair to the subject, because then I'm talking about it without actually talking about it. So, get that out of the way. Anyways, following Jackson's career to this point would have been a wild ride. Since this was before the internet, if you wanted to know anything about him outside of his music, you would have had to rely on television spots, newspaper articles maybe, and articles in tabloids. Jackson famously didn't like the tabloids, surprisingly. They spread a lot of misinformation about him. They called him Wacko Jacko and spread rumors like he slept in an oxygen chamber and tried to buy the Elephant Man's bones. So, of course, Michael corrected a lot of this misinformation.
Touching it, feeling it, and decide to just go inside of it, just to hammer around. Somebody takes a picture. When they process the picture, the person who processes the picture say, oh, Michael Jackson. He made a copy. These pictures went all over the world with this lie attached to it. It's a complete lie.
And tried his hardest to display the actual down-to-earth personality that he has, by talking about the toilet that he shared with his chimp or the amusement park that he built for himself to live in. You tell him, Mike! Oh, and apparently he did actually own the oxygen chamber. He just didn't sleep in it. Alright, to be fair, Michael Jackson was the literal bullseye of the media at this point. Everybody was making stories about him, and the rumors about him expanded far past his actual eccentricities. Still, with such a massive amount of rumors surrounding the career of this superstar, everyone thought there must be at least some skeletons in his oxygen chamber. So with such a controversial, eccentric, and sort of unrelatable public image, one might have been surprised to find out that Michael's next big aspiration was playing famous, relatable teenage superhero, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can.
See, in the 90s, it would have been strange for Michael to play Spider-Man because Peter Parker had yet to establish himself as a dance machine. But Michael Jackson was a huge comic book fan, and a bit of a movie star. He had already dipped his toe into acting with The Wiz, and he had just starred in his own action blockbuster, Moonwalker. Action blockbuster might have been misleading. It was more like a music video for an hour and a half with some action in the middle for no reason. Now, it's actually been years since I've seen Moonwalker, and I didn't realize that until I started trying to think of things to say about it, so I'm gonna watch it real quick and then get back to you guys. So, see you in 92 minutes.
I don't like spiders.
Wait a minute.
It's an artistic masterpiece. No, I thought I was going to have a lot less to say about this movie. Like, I thought I was going to be able to fit a whole review into the middle of this video just really quickly, but there's absolutely no way. The movie is insane, and I don't know if it's in a good or a bad way, so maybe I'll make another video on it later, but the gist of what you need to know for this story is that in the middle of the movie, Michael Jackson gets in, like, a bar fight, and then turns into a robot. And it's a lot of dance fighting or lasers, so he could definitely play Spider-Man. Anyways, so Michael wanted to play Spider-Man, so he approached Stan Lee to pitch the idea to him. Now, at the time, a Spider-Man movie was actually already in pre-production, being headed up by James Cameron. Cameron's version of the character was a teenager, which is not always the norm for Spider-Man, and he was also a lot grittier than most Spider-Men were at the time, except for this one scene from the cartoon. Now, obviously, Jackson could do gritty, but it's possible that this was not the best fit for him. Now, wait, I know it's a hot take, but let me explain. First of all, Michael Jackson was about 37 years old when this movie was being planned out, which is 10 years older than Tobey Maguire was when he was too old to be playing a teenager. And unlike the Raimi films where Peter was swiftly kicked to college the second he got bit by the spider, the Cameron movie was very grounded in this idea of Peter as a teenager. Specifically the idea of teenage sexuality. See, in the movie, Peter has a relationship with a teenage Mary Jane, and throughout the movie, he's doing a lot of weird sexual stuff. There's a scene in the movie where Spider-Man watches Mary Jane undress through the window of her home, and then later on in the film, Mary Jane does other stuff with Spider-Man on the bridge. Now, that's already a creepy enough story on its own, especially between two teenage characters, but in my opinion, having Michael Jackson in his late 30s portray the teenage Peter Parker would not have helped anything. Another aspect of the movie that Cameron really tried to focus on was the anger of Spider-Man. Now, if you don't know, Peter Parker, especially in the comics, has a very explosive temper. He screams, he lashes out, he hits hard, and he can honestly be a really scary guy when he has to be. Essentially, he can be a real badass if he needs to be, and I don't know about you, but I don't really see Michael as badass. He does have heat to a lot of his performances, but he can't exactly break into dance every time Peter has to be angry in the film. Okay, but if I can be an optimist for a second, there is one thing I do find interesting about Michael being this version of Spider-Man. See, Cameron has Spider-Man as a mega superstar who the public turns against, and with Michael at the time where he was in his career, I wouldn't hate seeing him portray that version of the character. A lot of the projects he was doing at the time were already thinly veiled vent sessions about how the public was treating him, and so with somebody like James Cameron at the helm of a film, if he could get his act together, it would be awesome to see him kind of vent through the story of Spider-Man. I think I would love to see that on film. And that's why I wasn't a film exec in the 90s. Stan Lee ended up telling Michael that he didn't think that the film executives would go for it, but Michael wasn't going to get told to beat it that easily. So what was his solution to the bosses at Marvel not liking him? Well, he was just going to buy Marvel Comics in its entirety.
I always heard this weird, crazy story that Michael almost bought the rights to Spider-Man. Can you confirm or deny? Do you know anything about this? Was it all of Marvel? Was it Spider-Man? What's the truth to this?
It was Marvel. It was, and I remember that. I remember being with my brothers and him talking about purchasing Marvel. He wanted to do that with Stan Lee, and they had been talking and discussing about that.
I mean, what would you have done? Now, there are two reasons I really like this move, and the first is that this is a solution that Michael turned to a lot. That is, buying away his problems. When he and the rest of the Jackson 5 were splitting up, he wasn't the only one pursuing a solo career. His brother Jermaine was as well. Michael started getting a little bit upset when Jermaine was doing well, and as Jermaine got better and better, Michael decided it was time to foil his plans. Michael hired Jermaine's producers right out from under him during the production of an album so they could come out and work with Michael, except for, as rumor has it, they didn't actually do any work on the album Michael was working on at the time. They just sat in a room for a week so they couldn't be working with Jermaine. That is literally a plan out of Plankton from SpongeBob's playbook.
I lost you! You work for me now, SpongeBob. Time to put on the official Chum Bucket helmet.
Michael's the Chum Bucket. The second thing I really like about this move is that it wasn't entirely impossible that it would work. See, in the 90s, Marvel wasn't quite as big as it is now, and the comic book industry in general was kind of falling apart. In fact, at this point, 1995-ish, Marvel was only a year away from declaring bankruptcy. So they probably could have used the money.
It was close to, because there was a point where Marvel was out of money, they were going bankrupt, and what I read, Michael was a huge Spider-Man fan and really wanted to make a Spider-Man movie, and so he was going to go buy Marvel. So this is that's facts.
Yeah, besides Spider-Man, he was a huge Marvel fan. He knew all the characters, so it was not only Spider-Man, but yeah, he probably wanted to be Spider-Man.
This means that there is actually a version of the world where Michael Jackson, the king of pop, was in charge of Marvel Comics and all its property. Alternate timelines are just so insane. I'm glad that we live in the normal world where Mickey Mouse ended up with them. In all sincerity, I do kind of wonder how that would have changed things, if Disney would have actually ever gotten Marvel, if Michael Jackson ended up with it, or if Michael would have done well with the property. I mean, I know people didn't expect Disney to do well with Marvel, but to be fair, that was kind of a bum call. I mean, it's Disney. They are literally good at making movies. Why wouldn't they have been good with Marvel? Whereas Michael Jackson is not as good at making movies. Look, none of us can be sure whether or not he would have fucked up. But it makes for better content if we do, so imagine how badly he would have fucked up. Oh man, this Michael Jackson Iron Man movie is so bad that it set my couch on fire. Stop setting fire to things and then blaming it on Michael Jackson movies. But also, I'm not completely without optimism. I could see some cool stuff coming from a Michael Jackson MCU, especially with some Jack Kirby-esque Marvel stuff. I mean, Michael Jackson had a good eye for visuals, and if he honed that in, he could make some incredible looking stuff. Of course, spoiler alert, for this real-life thing that happened nearly 20 years ago, Michael didn't get it. The talks about Michael buying Marvel actually got pretty far as I can tell. They discussed it for a while, but it ended up falling through for reasons I'm not really sure of. I would assume it's because trying to buy a comic book company would have been a weird move at the time, and it probably didn't mesh well with Michael's other projects, or maybe with Marvel's plans, so they just didn't do it. The planned Spider-Man movie was also eventually tanked due to a number of lawsuits and disputes over who owned the rights to the character. For now, a Spider-Man movie was just a twinkle in Sam Raimi's eye, and Michael Jackson moved on to trying to play Jar Jar Binks in the upcoming Star Wars Episode 1. That's also a real story, look it up. It wasn't long before Jackson became a recluse, and the comic book movie boom started chugging along without him, which kind of leads me to wonder what would have happened if Jackson had gotten his way. Would that movie have just been another quick flop on the way to Marvel movies as we know them today? Or would having a Spider-Man movie come out in the 90s trash plans for a 2002 movie, which trashes plans for all the comic book movies as we know them today? Because, let's face it, Marvel and Spider-Man and all of it is instrumental in the comic book boom today. And Michael Jackson having Marvel Comics or starring in a movie like that might have changed things a little bit, or a lot a bit. It's just cool to think about. Media is so easily changed or influenced that even one very rich man's desires could have affected things largely. Maybe even for the better? No, absolutely not. I feel very confident in saying it's a good thing that Michael Jackson did not get Marvel Comics or star in a Spider-Man movie. He was a very good musician and a very good artist, but he wasn't exactly a great movie star. To me, it would be like if Ariana Grande were to star in a Spider-Man movie. No, wait, she was an actor.
And we put him on hot dog buns, and we call him hot burgers.
Should Ariana Grande star in a Spider-Man movie? But anyways, hope you guys found that story interesting. I'm going to list my sources for all the things I found in the description, so go check those out if you want to know more about what I was saying or fact check anything that you think I might have gotten wrong. Also, thank you to Christian, who did the thumbnail work for today's video. He is a brilliant artist, and he actually invented a whole Spider-Man suit that he thinks Michael Jackson would have designed himself if he were given the chance. So go check him out on Instagram, which is listed on the screen right now because I don't just have it memorized. Christian and I are not only longtime Spider-Man fans, but we were also huge Michael Jackson fans as children. We used to spend sleepovers learning how to moonwalk and watching documentaries about how he was still alive. No, we didn't have any other friends. Why do you ask? Okay, I've gotta go. I have to water something.